She accused a calm, older black man of carrying a fake passport, tore it in half in front of everyone, and had no idea he was the FAA inspector sent to audit her gate. The automatic doors slid open as Raymond Dandridge stepped into the departure terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson. He looked like any other traveler. Dark blue windbreaker, slacks pressed with care, and a plain black leather briefcase swinging gently at his side. No fanfare, no security entourage, no badge in sight. He paused under the fluorescent lights, watching the line build at security checkpoint C. From the outside, Raymond didn't seem like much, just a 57-year-old man moving through the world with quiet certainty. But under that calm surface was a mission he couldn't share with anyone in the crowd. Raymond had worked with the FAA for almost 3 decades. In his early years, he focused on aircraft maintenance protocols. But as the years passed and the reports of mistreatment and misconduct on the ground increased, his work shifted. He didn't wear a uniform anymore. His power was in what he observed and what he could report. This trip wasn't just business. It was a test. A field audit, initiated after 4 different complaints came in over 2 months, all pointing to one troubling pattern. Black and brown travelers were being stopped, questioned, and in some cases denied boarding at certain gates. No official reason, just security concerns. So here he was, alone. No one knew who he really was. Not the TSA agents, not the gate crew, not the passengers. That was the point. As Raymond made his way through the terminal, he kept his eyes sharp. He wasn't looking for drama. He was looking for patterns. How people were spoken to, who was being asked extra questions, who got the side glances, who was smiled at and waved through without a second look. He stopped at a coffee kiosk and ordered a small Americano. The barista, a young guy with a nose ring and nervous energy, smiled as he handed him the cup. "You flying domestic or international today?" the kid asked. "International," Raymond replied, sipping the drink. "Toronto." "Nice. You ever been? A few times?" Raymond said with a faint smile. "I always learn something new." It wasn't a lie. Toronto was one of his favorite cities to work in. Straightforward inspections, good people. But today, his attention wasn't on the destination. It was on Gate C-14. As he made his way through the corridor, the voices of airport announcements crackled overhead. "Final boarding call for Flight 8802 to Montreal. Passengers, please report to Gate A2 immediately." Raymond didn't rush. He had plenty of time. He made mental notes of the gate agents he passed, their expressions, the body language they used with different people. Some smiled politely, others barely looked up. When he reached C-14, the area was moderately full. People with carry-ons slouched in plastic chairs, half listening for boarding calls. A mother balanced a baby on her hip while scrolling her phone. A man in a sharp suit argued quietly with someone on Bluetooth. The air smelled faintly of pretzels and airport carpet cleaner. At the counter, a woman with platinum blonde hair and narrow glasses was typing rapidly into the terminal. Her name tag read, S. Wilcox. Her brows were drawn tight as she scrolled through passenger records. Raymond stepped forward calmly, passport in hand. "Good afternoon," he said politely. "Just checking in for the Toronto flight." She didn't look up. "Passport." He handed it over. She flipped it open and stared at it for longer than usual. Her fingers hesitated just slightly on the page. Then her eyes flicked up to him. "You sure this is yours?" Raymond blinked, confused but composed. "Yes?" "This doesn't look right," she muttered, more to herself than to him. Raymond said nothing, just waited. This wasn't new, but he hadn't even gotten 2 words out before suspicion landed on him like a weight. She turned the passport over again, furrowed her brow, and let out a small scoff. "What's your purpose for visiting Canada?" he answered without hesitation. "Business." "What kind of business?" "Transportation." That was technically true. Vague enough to keep the cover intact, but accurate. Her fingers tapped the desk. "I'm gonna need to verify this," she said flatly. "Step to the side." Raymond did as told. He moved a few feet back, near a support column, and leaned against it quietly. He watched her as she went into the system again, this time shaking her head. He caught the glance she gave to the passenger behind him. It was a look that said, "Can you believe this guy?" That's when he knew. But something told him this wasn't going to be just another report. This time, it was going to get messy. Stephanie Wilcox didn't know she was being watched. Not just by the man she'd just brushed off, but by several sets of eyes in the boarding area. Some curious, some cautious. People notice things, even if they pretend they're not paying attention. Raymond stayed quiet. He didn't pull out a phone or puff his chest. He just waited. That was part of the job. Patience. Observation. Restraint. But even for someone with his experience, there were limits. Stephanie tapped furiously on the keyboard again, muttering something under her breath. The guy next in line, a white man in his 30s wearing a Harvard hoodie, stepped up. "Passport?" she asked. He handed it over. Less than 5 seconds later, she was smiling and handing it back. "You're all set, Mr. Riley. Enjoy your flight." He gave a quick nod and moved along. Raymond took a breath, small and quiet. Another passenger came up, then another. Each one moved through the process faster than he had. Each one got a smile, a simple question, or nothing at all. After 5 minutes, he stepped forward again. "Excuse me, I just wanted to check. Has my document been verified?" Stephanie didn't look at him. "Still reviewing," she kept typing. Then, almost as if annoyed by the presence of someone asking for basic respect, she sighed loud enough for a few heads to turn. "Sir," she said, finally looking up, "I'm going to ask you again. Are you sure this is your passport?" Raymond met her stare. "Yes, I am. Because this photo doesn't look like you." A woman seated nearby glanced up. She blinked, looked at Raymond, then at the passport in the agent's hand. She frowned slightly but said nothing. "It's a current passport," Raymond said. "Issued last year." "Where were you born?" Stephanie asked abruptly. "Baltimore." She squinted. "And your middle name?" Raymond paused. "Lorenzo." She typed something again. Her eyes narrowed. Then she said it. "This looks fake anyway." And before he could open his mouth, she grabbed the passport by the edge and tore it in half. A sharp gasp came from someone behind him. Another person said quietly, "No way." Raymond didn't move. The torn pieces of his passport lay on the counter like something disposable. Stephanie crossed her arms, as if she'd just solved a minor inconvenience. "You'll need to wait for airport security," she said. "You might be detained for attempting to travel with forged documents." Raymond stared at her for a long moment, then finally spoke. "I need you to repeat what you just said." She smirked slightly. "You heard me." Silence stretched out in the air between them. People were shifting in their seats. Some had their phones out now, recording quietly. This wasn't just a customer service issue anymore. Then came a voice from behind the rope divider, a woman in jeans and a long coat. She was filming. "Ma'am, he didn't even raise his voice. He just asked about his passport. Please step back." Stephanie snapped. Another voice chimed in, a young guy wearing a Delta crew badge. "Is there a problem here?" Stephanie turned to him. "I have a potential forgery case. I've already destroyed the document." The crew member looked stunned. "You tore up his passport?" "It was fake." The man turned to Raymond. "Sir, do you have another form of ID?" Raymond opened his briefcase and quietly pulled out his federal ID. He didn't hand it over, just showed it for a second, long enough for the young man's face to change. "Sir, are you with the FAA?" Raymond's voice stayed calm. "I am." Stephanie's face froze. He put the badge away. "And I'll be needing the names of every gate staff member on duty, immediately." The silence that followed was painful. People didn't know whether to cheer, record more, or just sit with their mouths open. Stephanie opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "You've just torn up the passport of a federal inspector conducting a live audit," Raymond added. "You've also made public accusations and denied a passenger boarding access without cause. I suggest you call your supervisor, now." But the damage had already been done, and it wasn't going to be swept under the rug. It started slow, just one woman holding her phone slightly higher, pretending to scroll. But after Stephanie ripped that passport and Raymond calmly revealed who he was, the phones started rising like sunflowers to the sun. The tension in the air was no longer quiet. It had cracked open. Whispered comments turned to soft murmurs, and murmurs became audible words. Did she really tear it? Did he say FAA? Yo, that's going to be everywhere by tonight. The woman in the long coat kept filming. She turned her phone slightly, catching Raymond's face. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't throwing accusations. He just stood there, the picture of control, while everything around him began to unravel. Stephanie, for her part, looked like she wanted the floor to open up beneath her feet. She was still standing behind the gate counter, arms now folded tightly across her chest, but her confidence had taken a hit. Her eyes darted to the side, then back to her computer, as if hoping something official-looking on the screen would make this all go away. The young Delta crew member, the one who had seen Raymond's FAA credentials, was now on a handheld radio, walking away from the counter. His voice wasn't raised, but he was clearly speaking quickly. Raymond didn't move from his spot. A middle-aged man in a charcoal blazer came forward and asked, not unkindly, "Sir, would you like a seat while this is sorted out?" "I'm fine," Raymond replied. "But thank you." Behind him, a man holding a tablet mumbled, "This is why people don't trust flying anymore." The woman next to him nodded. "And this is happening in broad daylight, right in front of everybody. I knew something was off with her attitude from the start." Someone else added, "She was all sugar to the folks before him. Then he walks up and she flips the switch." From the other side of the terminal hallway, another gate agent from Gate C13, an older man with salt and pepper hair, appeared. He looked directly at Stephanie and gestured subtly for her to come over. She didn't budge. Instead, she turned to Raymond and spoke, her voice lower now. "I'm sure we can work this out without it becoming something bigger." Raymond kept his gaze steady. "You made it something bigger the moment you assumed my identity was false." She flinched at that. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't theatrical. But it landed. From the corner of the terminal, a security guard began walking over. Not the heavy-handed kind. This one looked confused, like someone had only half filled him in on what was happening. He arrived, looked between Stephanie, Raymond, and the growing crowd. "Everything all right here?" Raymond turned his head slowly and said, "She destroyed a federal document. Mine. Without cause." The guard blinked. "You want to file a report?" "Oh," a woman said sharply from the row of chairs. "He's more than filing a report. Check Twitter." Someone else added, "It's already out there." Another passenger waved his phone. "I posted it 2 minutes ago. Got 300 views already. It's climbing." Stephanie turned to the security guard. He refused to comply with document verification protocol. Raymond calmly interrupted. "I handed you a valid active US passport. I answered your questions. I stood aside when asked. The video footage will show that." He gestured toward the terminal ceiling. "There are cameras right above us." The security guard looked up. His hand went instinctively to the mic clipped on his shoulder. "Dispatch," he said. "Need to confirm surveillance availability at Gate C14. Possible federal matter." A new voice entered the scene. A woman in a navy blue blazer, polished heels clicking on the tile floor. She carried a clipboard and a laminated badge that read, "Zone Supervisor." "Miss Wilcox," she said, direct and firm. "Please come with me." Stephanie hesitated, then followed. The zone supervisor turned to Raymond. "Sir, may I speak with you privately?" Raymond nodded. "Of course." The two of them began walking toward a hallway near the jet bridge, away from the eyes and phones. But it didn't stop the ripple through the waiting area. The phones stayed up. Voices exchanged theories. Some angry, some incredulous, some just stunned. "Man, they picked the wrong guy today." "Yeah. And he didn't even raise his voice." "Nope. And he's got receipts." But outside that hallway, the story was already growing legs, and the internet wasn't going to wait for an official statement. Inside the hallway, things got colder. Not physically, though the temperature did dip slightly as they entered the back corridor, but in tone, the kind of cold you feel when people start choosing their words too carefully. Raymond sat across from the zone supervisor in a small room meant for quick interviews and badge checks. It had a low, humming vent, a table bolted to the floor, and a camera mounted in the corner. The walls were a dull beige, worn by years of tense conversation. The supervisor, whose badge read N. Morales, closed the door softly and sat down. She didn't look hostile, more like someone trying to hold back a storm with a clipboard and a checklist. "I'm Nicole Morales," she began. "I just want to make sure we get everything on the record properly, Mr. Dandridge," Raymond replied. "Raymond Dandridge." She clicked her pen. "Are you with the FAA?" He reached into his briefcase, opened the slim black folder, and pulled out his credentials. He handed them across the table. Her eyes scanned the gold seal, the official photo, the ID number. She stiffened. "You're doing an inspection?" "I was," he said plainly, until it turned into something else. Nicole exhaled through her nose. "I need to inform my terminal director and airport police." "I assumed as much," he said. "You might want to retrieve the surveillance footage from gate C-14 while you're at it." Nicole stood up, suddenly more aware of how big this had just become. Raymond remained seated, tapping one finger slowly on the table. He wasn't nervous, just calculating. This wasn't his first time catching misconduct, but it was the first time someone had literally destroyed a federal passport in front of a crowd. Moments later, a uniformed officer entered. His badge read Sergeant D. Koenig. Tall, solid build, expression blank. "Mr. Dandridge?" the officer asked. "Yes. I've been asked to escort you to the terminal office while we sort this out." Raymond gave a tight smile. "Am I being detained?" Koenig paused. "No, sir. We just need to clarify a few details." Raymond stood. "Then I'll walk." They moved down another hallway, Raymond flanked by Nicole and Koenig, toward the deeper security wing. As they walked, Nicole kept glancing at her phone. Notifications were coming in rapid fire. She was already 2 steps behind the pace of the story. When they reached the terminal office, it was already crowded. A junior supervisor stood near the desk, eyes wide, holding 2 printed pages. Another woman with an airline legal badge was whispering on the phone in the corner. Stress was contagious in that room. Raymond took a seat, opened his briefcase again, and this time pulled out a thin folder. Inside, a list of complaints submitted to the FAA. 4 names, 4 dates, 4 nearly identical allegations, all from travelers who said they had been treated as suspicious or combative at gate C-14 for no clear reason. He placed it on the table. Nicole walked over and read the first page. Her jaw tightened. She didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she said, "Why wasn't this flagged earlier?" Raymond didn't answer right away. Then calmly, "Because this wasn't about getting someone fired. It was about seeing if the problem was as real as the complaints said it was." A younger staffer entered the room and whispered into Nicole's ear. Her face changed. "What is it?" Raymond asked. "The video," she replied. "The one from a passenger's phone. It's already on 3 major news accounts." Raymond leaned back slightly. That was fast. "Too fast," Nicole muttered. She looked toward the legal rep, who was now off the phone and visibly sweating. "This may go federal by tomorrow morning." Raymond glanced at the clock on the wall. 11:48 am. It hadn't even been 2 hours since he entered the airport. Then Koenig, the officer, stepped forward. "We've confirmed the security footage backs up your version of the incident. You stood calmly. You answered her questions. You never raised your voice." "I know," Raymond said, "but thank you for confirming it." Nicole cleared her throat. "Do you want to file a formal complaint now, or wait for the FAA investigation to complete?" Raymond looked up at her and said, "You should be more worried about what's already been filed, because this isn't isolated, and you know it." But while they scrambled to contain the leak, outside that room, the public had already started forming its opinion, and they weren't waiting for the official version. Raymond wasn't in that back room to argue. He wasn't there for apologies or explanations. He had one job left: document everything and make sure what happened at gate C-14 would be impossible to ignore. Nicole Morales stood near the corner of the room, her blazer folded over a chair now, sleeves rolled up like someone who'd suddenly realized she was no longer just part of the airport. She was part of the story. 2 more senior staff had joined them in the last 15 minutes. One was Earl Bronson, a regional operations manager who had been pulled out of a lunch meeting 2 terminals over. The other, Lana Feld, was legal counsel for the airline's Southeast Division. She wore no expression at all. Her words, when she spoke, were polished but lacked warmth. "We are fully committed to investigating this incident and working with all relevant federal agencies," Lana said, folding her hands on the table like she was presenting at a board meeting. Raymond sat with his legs crossed, his FAID now resting visibly on the table between them. "I'm sure you are," he said, "but I want to be clear. This isn't about a misunderstanding. Your gate agent destroyed a government-issued passport in a public setting, accused me of carrying forged documents, and created a disruption without ever following proper protocol." Earl tried to interject. "We understand emotions were running high." Raymond cut him off, still calm. "Mine weren't." That shut the room up for a second. Nicole reached into a drawer and pulled out a thin envelope. She slid it toward Raymond. "The 2 halves of your passport. I thought you'd want to keep them for documentation." He looked at the envelope. Didn't touch it. "Thank you," he said. Lana leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Dandridge, are you planning to pursue legal action?" "I'm not here to discuss lawsuits," he answered. "I'm here to complete my audit." There was a shift in the room, the kind that happens when people realize they've only just started to feel the fallout. Raymond took out a printed sheet from his folder. "I'll be submitting this report to FAA Internal Affairs by the end of today. It includes full details of my experience, as well as notes on staff behavior, gate surveillance, and the response from supervisors." He paused and looked around the table. "I've also included a pattern of complaints filed by travelers from the last 8 months, 5 of which involved Gate C14. 4 of those involved Ms. Wilcox." Nicole visibly winced. Earl cleared his throat. "We were unaware of that trend. That's part of the problem," Raymond said. There was silence for a long stretch. Then Lana spoke again, carefully. "If we request a follow-up meeting with our HR department and Diversity and Inclusion division, would you be willing to join that conversation?" Raymond tilted his head slightly. "Your departments are welcome to do their part, but my responsibility is to report facts, not to help you write a better press statement." Nicole rubbed her forehead. Outside the small office, things weren't calming down. Another junior staffer had walked in with a tablet showing a live feed of a trending video. Raymond's encounter. Over 2.7 million views. Comments exploding. News accounts already tagging the airline's official page. "CNN's requesting a statement," the staffer muttered to Earl. "And so is Channel 5 Atlanta." Raymond gave a small, tired sigh. "You can tell them I'm not available for comment." He stood up, slid his folder back into his briefcase, and looked around the room one more time. "You've got a window to make this right. It won't stay open long." Nicole followed him to the door. "Where are you heading now?" "I'll finish my route," he said. "Then I'll be returning to DC in the morning." She looked like she wanted to say something more, an apology maybe, but couldn't quite find the words. He walked past her. As he stepped out into the terminal hallway, another passenger caught his eye. A woman with a toddler strapped to her chest gave him a quiet thumbs up. Another man, further down, gave him a respectful nod. Raymond didn't return the gestures, not because he didn't appreciate them, but because he knew this wasn't about him anymore. But as he walked back into the public eye, it was already clear. This was no longer just about one gate agent. It was about every face she'd ever made uncomfortable, and every person who'd said nothing while it happened. The airline's regional control office on the 3rd floor wasn't built for chaos. It was designed for logistics. Flight schedules, weather maps, fuel ratios, and gate assignments lined the monitors on the wall. But now, everything had shifted. People weren't looking at radar or snow delays anymore. They were reading tweets, scrolling through comment sections, fielding urgent calls from PR teams and legal consultants. The digital war room was activated, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't about lost luggage or delayed flights. Lana Feld walked in fast, without her clipboard this time. "How bad is it?" she asked no one in particular. A guy at the far end of the room, lean, wiry, with his headset hanging off one ear, turned his monitor toward her. "You tell me." On screen was the top post on X. A passenger's video showed Raymond standing calmly, Stephanie tearing the passport, and several people audibly reacting in real time. Lana watched in silence as the video played, then looped. 58,000 shares in the last hour, the tech added. It's already picked up by Morning America, and Sieb just tagged us in a comment asking for a statement. Damage control? Someone asked. No, Lana said flatly. This is past control. We're in full-on containment mode. In a side room off the main floor, a high-level emergency briefing had begun. Nicole Morales sat stiffly at the table, trying to keep her breathing steady. She'd only been promoted to zone supervisor 6 months ago, and already her name was on an incident file marked Federal Violation Review. Across from her sat her director, Lionel Griggs, mid-50s, always looked like he was one step away from blowing up, but somehow never quite did. He slapped a printout on the table. This agent, Wilcox, what the hell were we doing keeping her in rotation? Nicole hesitated. We had no written complaints on file. Nothing formal. 4 passengers listed her by name in FAA complaints, Lionel barked. You telling me not one of those made it back to your desk? I didn't see them. I'm not sure if HR... Stop, he said, holding up a hand. This isn't about HR anymore. This is about the fact that one of our gate agents publicly humiliated and falsely accused a federal inspector on camera, in broad daylight, surrounded by passengers, and she tore up his passport. He looked at Nicole hard. I don't care how many people smiled at her on her lunch breaks. She cost us more than just bad press. She might have cost us federal partnerships. A junior assistant popped her head in. FAA Office of Communications just issued a statement confirming Mr. Dandridge was conducting a live inspection tied to profiling allegations. Lionel didn't say anything. He just rubbed his temples. Back on the floor, Lana had rejoined the rest of the legal team, now fielding phone calls from regional managers, union reps, and journalists. The video hadn't just gone viral. It had gone nuclear. I just got off the phone with CBC Toronto. A passé toi, Sir said. They're asking why a black federal agent couldn't board a flight to Canada without being accused of fraud. Lana gave a cold smile. They already know the answer. They just want us to say it out loud. The room was silent for a beat. Then she said, Has Wilcox been removed from all assignments? Nicole, standing nearby, answered, She's on administrative leave. We took her badge an hour ago. Not good enough, Lana said. We need a public-facing decision by 5 p.m., and we need internal guidance on what we tell our other agents. If this spreads to other airports... A different supervisor interrupted. It already has. Someone just posted an old clip from LAX of a similar situation. Guess who the agent was? Lana blinked. You're joking? Nope. Wilcox used to work LAX before she transferred last year. She had a rep. Another silence. The PR officer looked up. We've got about 6 hours before we're trending again on the evening news. What's the message? Lana hesitated. Then she said, You tell them the agent has been removed. We're cooperating with federal investigators, and we're reviewing all internal procedures relating to identity verification and gate conduct. Should we apologize? Not yet. Why not? Because if the FAA drops that audit report this week, Lana said, we'll need to apologize for a lot more than just this. But what they didn't realize was that Raymond's report wasn't the real problem anymore. It was what it would inspire next. By 2:17 the clip of Stephanie Wilcox ripping up Raymond Dandridge's passport had been reposted over 100,000 times. The footage was raw, no editing, no commentary, just a man standing quietly while his identity was called into question in front of a crowd. It wasn't just travel bloggers or civil rights pages sharing it anymore. The story had jumped. CNN posted a still image with the caption, FAA inspector accused of forgery by airline staff during routine audit. By the next refresh, MSNBC, CBC, and even Al Jazeera had it running in their feeds. People weren't just reacting, they were outraged. I've flown through that terminal. I know that look agents give you when they've already decided who you are. Imagine tearing up a federal document on camera and still acting like you've got nothing to answer for. This is why people stop trusting systems. Raymond's name trended in less than an hour. His photo, pulled from a past aviation safety conference, floated beside headlines like Wrong Man, Wrong Move, and FAA undercover inspector humiliated at gate C14. But it wasn't just sympathy he was receiving. It was validation. One by one, other flyers started posting their own stories. 2 years ago, she stopped me because I looked nervous. I was late for my mother's funeral. She once asked my 12-year-old son if he had really packed his own bag. Who does that? I knew her face the moment I saw the video. It became clear. This wasn't about one incident. This was about a pattern. And now that people saw it on tape, they were less willing to doubt what others had quietly endured. Inside the FAA's communications office in Washington, D.C., phones were ringing off the hook. Internal Affairs had already received the preliminary summary from Raymond, but the director of the office, Wanda Kim, knew this case was different. She stood with her team reviewing the timeline on a large monitor. So he didn't reveal himself until after security took him aside. "Nope," one of her aides replied. "Stayed in character until the agent doubled down. Only showed ID when it was clear she'd made a serious error." And the crowd? Completely on his side. No aggressive behavior on his part. Video backs it all up. Wanda nodded. He did exactly what we trained him to do. Quiet observation. Document, then verify. Let them show you who they are. She turned back to her assistant. "Have we pulled Wilcox's employee history?" "We did. It's not pretty." "How so?" "She's had 2 internal reports closed without review, both from her time at LAX, complaints about aggressive behavior and personal bias. Nothing ever escalated. Until now." Wanda closed her laptop. "Tell legal to prepare a statement. FAA will cooperate with all reviews, but will also be issuing a recommendation on staff conduct for any gate personnel working on federal contracts." Back in Atlanta, Stephanie Wilcox sat in a conference room far from the gate she once worked. Her badge had been deactivated. Her phone was blowing up, not with messages of support, but with screenshots, memes, and brutal public commentary. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through one post after another. Imagine being this confident and this wrong. She thought she could talk down to him. She didn't know he wrote the rule book. She didn't recognize this version of herself. But maybe she never had to face it until now. No manager had ever pulled her aside. No one ever pushed back. Until today. A soft knock at the door broke her trance. Nicole Morales stepped in with folded arms and an unreadable face. Stephanie didn't speak. Nicole sat across from her and said, "You're going to be contacted by the FAA within the next 48 hours. "For what?" Stephanie whispered. Nicole didn't blink. "For questioning, for a written statement, and likely a full inquiry into your history here and in Los Angeles." Stephanie opened her mouth, then closed it again. Nicole continued, "You need to understand something. He wasn't just anyone, and this wasn't just a bad day." Stephanie's voice came out small. "I didn't know." Nicole stood. "That's the problem." But now that the story had escaped the terminal walls, no one could unsee what they saw, or unknow what they'd learned. 2 days later, Raymond sat in his DC office. Nothing flashy, just a desk, a single window facing the parking lot, and shelves filled with binders older than some of the new hires. He was reviewing final edits to his incident report. The document was 34 pages long, meticulously organized, every detail timed to the minute. His phone buzzed. A message from FA Internal Affairs. "Toronto office confirms 3 similar complaints at Pearson over past year. Same airline, similar behavior." He didn't respond right away, just leaned back in his chair, rubbed his temples, and let out a slow breath. He'd known, deep down, this wasn't isolated to one airport. You don't get a pattern like this from a single bad hire. Stephanie Wilcox had been the match, but the gasoline had been leaking for years. Later that afternoon, Raymond joined a virtual meeting with Wanda Kim and several FAA regional inspectors. Most of their faces showed fatigue. Bags under the eyes, brows furrowed, jaws set like bricks. Wanda got to the point quickly. "We've begun compiling all identity-based complaints linked to the top 10 busiest domestic airports. Not just racial profiling. Everything. Age, language barriers, perceived immigration status. It's a mess." A younger inspector named Jeremy Aguilar from the Phoenix office spoke next. "I had 2 travelers last month who were stopped at boarding because they spoke too softly. Gate agent claimed they were evasive. Turns out they were both deaf." A few heads shook. Wanda turned to Raymond. Your report is going to be the foundation for a broader compliance review. Congress is paying attention now." Raymond didn't smile. He didn't like the politics. He liked clean process, clear policies, accountability. "I'm not interested in headlines," he said. "I want these procedures fixed." "You may get both," Wanda replied. "The Office of Civil Rights is looking to coordinate with us. They want in on the findings." Jeremy muttered. "They should have been in years ago." The meeting continued for another half hour. By the time it ended, Raymond had 7 follow-up tasks and a dozen more incidents to review from the last 6 months. It felt like climbing uphill with a broken shoe, but momentum had shifted. Not because of a dramatic speech or a viral campaign, but because someone finally caught the system doing what so many had claimed for years. Back in Atlanta, the terminal had changed too. Gate C14 now had 2 cameras installed above the counter. Extra angles, higher resolution. Every gate agent had been ordered to complete an updated training module within 72 hours. Supervisors were required to file incident logs weekly for FA review. It wasn't revolution, but it was movement. One agent, Denise Trammell, who'd worked in the terminal for over 15 years, noticed the difference. "They're walking softer now," she said to a co-worker while scanning boarding passes. "Funny how quiet people get when somebody important gets treated the way we get treated all the time." Her co-worker, a young guy named Rico, looked over. "You ever have her, Wilcox?" Denise gave a slow nod. "Had to work next to her twice. You could feel it. Like the rules changed depending on who walked up to the counter." "Why didn't anybody say anything?" Denise looked him in the eye. Who would have listened? That question stuck in Rico's head for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, the airline's legal department had launched an internal audit of all gate agent records over the past 5 years. Several other employees had already been flagged for excessive passenger conflict. One name caught attention, a man in Miami who'd been quietly transferred after multiple altercations. Another in Dallas who'd consistently randomly selected young men with dual citizenships. They hadn't made headlines yet, but after Wilcox, those days were likely numbered. Raymond got an email from a former agent who had seen the video. Subject line, "Wish I'd said something when I had the chance." The body was short. "I worked next to her for 6 months. You were right to write it all down. Thank you." Raymond didn't reply, but he saved it in a folder labeled Testimonies. But what mattered most now wasn't what had happened. It was what people were finally willing to say out loud. 1 week after the incident, Raymond found himself standing at a podium in a conference room in Washington, D.C., addressing a room full of transportation executives, FAA investigators, and civil rights observers. It wasn't supposed to be a press event, but reporters had shown up anyway. The story had grown larger than anyone expected. Raymond adjusted the microphone. "I wasn't trying to make an example out of anyone," he began, voice calm but direct. "I was doing what I've done for nearly 30 years, quietly observing the systems that hold up public safety, and occasionally, public trust." He let that hang for a moment before continuing. "When a gate agent tears up a passport because they don't like the look of the person holding it, that's not just misconduct. It's negligence. It's bias. And when it goes unchecked, it becomes policy in everything but name." The room stayed silent. He looked down briefly at his notes. He'd rewritten the speech 3 times, tossing out anything that sounded like spin. What was left was bare, honest, and heavy. "I've been asked whether I forgive her. The answer is I don't know. That's not the point. The point is whether we're finally ready to change how things are done." After he spoke, a few questions were allowed. One reporter from The Atlantic asked the only one that mattered. "Mr. Dandridge, do you believe anything will actually change?" Raymond paused. "I believe people are watching now. That's a start." Back in Atlanta, the airport was different, but not entirely. A new memo had gone out that morning. Gate agents were now subject to random FAA monitoring during international flights. Supervisors would be held directly accountable for repeated complaints. Stephanie Wilcox had officially been terminated, her access revoked across all terminals nationwide. In the employee break room, 2 agents were sitting in silence as the memo scrolled across the flat screen. "Think they're gonna make us go through another seminar?" one of them muttered. The other, an older woman named Tanya, who'd worked there over 20 years, shook her head. They can throw all the training at us they want. Until they start hiring people who know how to treat passengers like humans, nothing sticks. A supervisor walked in and caught the end of her sentence. You got something to say, Tanya? She looked him dead in the eye. I already said it. He didn't press further, just grabbed his coffee and walked out. Meanwhile, Raymond was back at his desk the next morning, sipping from a chipped mug, his inbox filling with interview requests. He deleted most of them without opening. This wasn't about becoming a public figure. He wasn't chasing airtime. He was trying to keep the focus where it belonged, fixing the system from the inside. That afternoon, a Zoom call was scheduled with FA field officers. Raymond logged on a few minutes early. Small windows began popping up across his screen. Inspectors from Detroit, Seattle, Tampa, San Jose. Some he'd worked with before. Others were new faces. Wanda Kim opened the meeting. Let's start with a round table, she said. Tell us one thing you've seen in the last week that gives you hope. Raymond didn't volunteer to go first. He listened. I had an agent apologize to a passenger yesterday after they were questioned too harshly, said a woman from Philadelphia. I've never seen that happen in 17 years. In Dallas, a gate team pulled one of their own aside, told her she was being out of line. That never used to happen without a supervisor. When it came to Raymond, he spoke slowly. Hope doesn't come from policies. It comes from people being willing to speak when something's wrong. And now that the public's seen what wrong looks like, they're finally asking the right questions. He paused. My job was never to embarrass anybody. My job is to shine a light in the corner where things get ignored. Outside the building, the DC air had that dry, early spring chill. Kids were walking home from school, and traffic pulsed down the boulevard in front of FAA headquarters like any other weekday. But for the first time in a long time, Raymond felt that maybe, just maybe, this time, the silence was broken for good. But it wasn't enough to break the silence. Now they had to decide what they'd do with the noise. 2 weeks later, Raymond returned to the Atlanta airport. Not undercover this time. No briefcase. No quiet observations. He wasn't there for work. He was there because he wanted to see it with clear eyes, without the pressure of a hidden role. Gate C14 looked the same on the surface. Same dull carpeting, same plastic chairs, same busy traffic. But there was a subtle shift. Staff seemed sharper, more cautious. Every interaction was a little more measured. Not forced, but aware. He watched an older woman ask a question about a delayed flight. The agent didn't sigh or dismiss her. He leaned forward and explained it kindly. Another man walked up, visibly nervous about missing his connection. Instead of brushing him off, a staffer walked him to the screen and double-checked the gate number. Raymond took a quiet seat and just observed. At one point, a young black couple with a baby approached the counter. The agent who greeted them, someone new, he hadn't seen her before, smiled, cooed at the baby, and helped them board early without them having to ask. Small moment. But it mattered. 15 feet away, a mother snapped a quick photo of the family as they disappeared down the jet bridge. That image would probably show up on someone's social feed with a caption like, "Traveling with kindness today." Raymond didn't need to record any of this. It wasn't for a report. It wasn't for a file. It was for him. He stood up slowly and made his way toward the escalator. As he passed by the wall of framed airline policies, he caught his own reflection in the glass. Older, sure. Worn down in some ways, but still steady. He thought about Stephanie Wilcox, not with anger, but with clarity. The truth was, she hadn't done anything new. She'd just finally been caught doing what so many others had done with less visibility. Her mistake wasn't just inaction, it was in confidence, believing she'd never be questioned, never be held accountable. People like Raymond had lived through that certainty their whole lives. As he exited the terminal, a middle-aged man with a cane stepped aside to let him pass through the security doors. They made brief eye contact. The man nodded slightly. Raymond gave the same nod back. Outside, the wind tugged at his jacket. His ride was waiting near the curb. He slid into the back seat. The driver, a woman with long braids and a warm tone, glanced at him through the mirror. "Mr. Dandridge?" That's me. You're the guy from the video, right? Raymond gave a small smile. I guess I am. She didn't say anything right away. Then, my brother works TSA. He said folks at the airport been acting real different lately. I think you lit a fire. I didn't light anything, he said. I just didn't let them put it out. They rode in silence for a while, passing familiar billboards and signs along I-285. Then she spoke again. People forget that stuff matters. Being seen, being heard, not being talked down to. They don't forget, Raymond said. They're just taught not to expect it, she nodded. As they pulled up to his hotel, she asked, You think things will actually change? He paused, hand on the door handle. I think they already are, but only if people keep speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable. That night, in his hotel room, Raymond turned on the news. Another clip from a different airport had surfaced, this time in Minneapolis. A passenger questioned for not looking like his ID. But this time, a supervisor stepped in early, diffused the situation, apologized. It didn't make the primetime headlines, but it was something. Raymond closed his laptop. He thought about the generations behind him, the ones growing up now, the ones who might board a plane one day without having to carry the weight of someone else's suspicion. Maybe they'd never know his name. That was fine. What mattered was that someone had seen what happened and chose not to look away. Because sometimes all it takes to break a system is one moment of truth in a place built on routine. One voice that doesn't rise in anger, but stands in quiet certainty. One decision not to stay quiet anymore. And if you're still watching this story and thinking it was just about a man and a passport, think again. It's about all the moments we let pass. It's about what happens when we finally don't. If this story moved you, share it. Talk about it. And subscribe for more true stories that remind us why voices, especially the quiet ones, still matter.